so I'm going to introduce our panel from Project Everlast Lincoln. Project Everlast is a youth-led council of young folks between the ages of 14 and 24 that have had similar experience. And oftentimes that means juvenile justice system, also child welfare system or foster care. And then we're trying to kind of making the umbrella a little bit bigger, and maybe it includes things like homelessness and some stuff like that too. But traditionally, originally it was more geared towards folks that had experience in the foster care system. But we know, right, that there's a lot of crossover between the juvenile justice and the child welfare systems. So yeah, there's always been a sort of strong JJ component of the work that these young people do, and now maybe even more so. But we have like sort of two main things going on within the council, and that is, on one side of it, it's peer support and it's fun. So safe environment where we hang out and do cool, fun things, whether it's the pumpkin patch or the escape room or laser tag or whatever. And then, with that sort of peer support component, it's definitely folded in there. So folks with similar experiences, getting to hang out with each other and do fun things. The other aspect of the council is advocacy. So that can take the shape of what you are about to see, providing panels to people in the community. We just did our legislative day, February 3rd, I think it was. It was a Monday, first Monday of February, where these folks held a luncheon, invited their state senators, and sort of lobbied, right, for bills that they felt should be on these folks' radar. Something that they would, kind of say, hey, LB 870, you should be taking a look at it. That's restriction on use of, solitary confinement, right, in the juvenile justice system. And there was several other bills that they were out there, mostly sort of promoting in the affirmative. There wasn't anything this year that you said you were against.
No, well, there was split on the LR 293.
That's right. But yeah, so basically those are the two main fundamental aspects of the council: fun, peer support, advocacy. If we're going to pursue some kind of systems change or some kind of reform, then it should be informed by the experience of the participants in those systems. Kind of that's the basic idea there. So I will do a brief introduction, kind of. Maybe I'll just let you introduce yourselves. Yeah? Or do you want me to do it? I'll let you all introduce yourselves. So here we have our panel of young folks from Project Everlast. We hope to have had a couple more. We have one member who's in the hospital, got in a bike wreck, and they're worried about his spleen, so he couldn't make it today. So he tells me he's okay though. So
that's bad.
Yeah.
He's always okay.
And we had a couple more that were sort of showed interest but couldn't make it today up. But we have a great panel for you here. All three of these young folks have experience in these YRTCs, Kearney or Geneva or beyond even, and so really relevant experience, and they hope to provide you with the information that you all are looking for. They can sort of ad-lib a little bit, but we would really definitely appreciate your questions. That's hopefully going to be the engine that really drives this conversation, so that it's not so much like a didactic thing, but a conversation. So, let's dive in.
Okay, well, I'm Raven, and I'm an alumni with Project Everlast, and I was in the system for 7 years. 7? Yes.
I'm Nadal. I was in Geneva. I was in the system for 14 years. I'm 15. And
I am Timothy. I was in the system for 13 years. Two of them were spent at YOTC in Kearney, and then 4 of them were spent at a YOTC in Kansas. They don't call it YOTC.
Okay. All right.
So that the theme here, right, is that there'll be these folks will be mentoring young people that will be leaving the YRTCs. So it's sort of a re-entry kind of an idea. Can you speak to that in your experience, right? So what was it like? What help did you need? What resources did you need? What was there? What wasn't there? How can these folks be relevant to your needs?
Okay, well, we're gonna have an adult start off because she's not gonna tell you guys, but she's actually has a mentor from, had a mentor from like the other side, so like you guys, she had a mentor, so.
I met Allison when I was 16. She's my best friend still. She was supposed to be here today with her. But, we kind of just connected right away. We have a lot in common. We've been in a documentary together. I don't know, we've done a lot. She's been there through everything in my life since I met her. And she's like a big sister, I guess. I don't really know what else to say.
Can I ask a question? How was she there? Because I know Allison was in Michigan for a long time.
Yeah.
So you said she was there for you. But
The times that I came in before she went to Michigan, she came to the foster home I went to after I got out of Geneva. Every Sunday she would come and have breakfast with me and my foster parents before church, and sometimes she would go with us. And she would come every single weekend. We would go out to eat, we had a routine. Ice cream at Culver's, and then she was sneaking in for me during the movies. More of the rebel than I. And I was always scared. Like, I would just sit down on the wall of the movie was going to eat, like somebody was actually going to catch me and kick me out. But, she was there, like she drove 3 hours for my high school graduation. She never missed anything. Every birthday we spent together, every Christmas, every Thanksgiving we spent together. And if we weren't there for the birthdays, we would make it up. Like when she was in Michigan, we weren't able to spend holidays together or birthdays. But she came back in August for a couple days to spend with me and then went back. We always messaged each other, video chatted every time she was free. And she's back now. She got her bachelor's in human services. But she, like, every time she had her free time, she always came to talk to me. And she's so sweet. Like, every time I go to like pay for something, she always has her card ready. She never lets me pay.
Aww.
Like, I know you guys used to reimburse her. Now she pays her own money. Like, she never lets me pay. Do you have any questions?
When did you first start to trust her?
I think maybe like the second or third time she came out to Geneva to see me. Like, we just clicked right away. She was always honest with me. She never promised she would do anything if she knew she couldn't. Like, she knew I would get my hopes up, but she never promised anything. And if she wasn't able to make it, she would always make it up. So.
And that's a really good question, because a lot of times trust is, we think it's easy to build, but, you know, when as a youth who's gone through the system, we've been told, you know, this was going to happen, but then something else happened, you know, so our trust is really, we don't trust people, or just the simple fact that we go through so many people, so many workers, so many staff that we don't build that relationship. So it's definitely, like for me, like being able to trust you, like I feel like if you want me to open up about my personal life, well, I want to know about your dog. You want to know about my dog, so I want to know about your dog. So I want you to open up and tell me about you. So it's, you know, being able to open up and let them know, like, you're trying to help them on a personal level, not like a professional level, you know, like you care for them.
Professional, yeah, personal.
Yeah, you know, you care for them, you have a heart for them, you just want to help them, you know, and so being able to identify, you know, what side you're on is definitely a key to winning their hearts.
Yeah, I was gonna go off trusting. Like, when the first 6 years between, because I went in the system when I was 6, so between age 6 and 12, I had too many caseworkers accounts, so I never really had one steady caseworker that I could build trust with. So during that whole period, I was foster home, placement, foster home, like all over the map. And so it was really hard for me to build any standing relationships with anyone to trust. And finally, when I was like 12, I got one caseworker, and I had him all the way from the age of 12 till I aged out finally. I was one solid caseworker, and it took me probably, I'm gonna say about 2, maybe 2.5 years to actually start trusting him, because I was just that much, like I wasn't gonna trust him at all. I was not gonna get my hopes up that this was gonna be the one caseworker I was gonna have for the rest of the time, because even he told me when he came in, he was the most honest one. He's like, I probably won't stay with you more than a year. After this year, I'll probably be gone. You'll have a brand new caseworker. It's just how it is. And I think the thing that made me start trusting him was his straightforward honesty, and he would tell me, don't get your hopes up, but I think I can get you into a foster home that you can actually stay at longer than 3 months. Or I think this placement would help you with your current issue, and you could be there and have the support you need. And he would always just be straightforward and honest with me. And then he had that professional yet personal side of him. He would take, like, he would find out my hobbies, and if we had a hobby in common, like we had fishing in common. We both loved fishing, and I still love fishing. But he would, every Sunday, he would, on his day off too, he would come after he got out of church, come get me from the group home, and we would go fishing for 3-4 hours. And then he would bring me up, he would take me out to dinner and then back to the group home. And he would just be like, how you doing? How was this past week? And he was just there and said, but yeah, he was, like I said, professional yet personal at the same time. And there was actually this one time, it was in the middle of the night, and I'm using him because he was one of the mentors I had, because I'm still very in contact with him today, even though I'm out of the system, and we talk all the time. And it was the middle, it was I'm gonna say 10 o'clock at night. My mom got arrested, and they couldn't find a foster home or the emergency placement for me right away, because no one was at the HHS. And he was a one-on-call. He was trying. We were sitting outside my house trying to find a foster home. And he was like, you know what, I have foster care training. I'm a foster parent. I just never bring anyone into my home because it would be conflict with work. But I can't find you one tonight. Like, everyone's saying I'm 4 or, they're 4. And, so he took me for that. He was like, this is one night. I'm going to be honest with you. This is one night. When the office reopens in the morning, we're going to find you a foster emergency placement. And he took me, and I got to meet his family, and they were wonderful. And I think that was the moment I really started trusting him, is when he kind of really looked that professional yet personal level, and I got to know him more on a personal level. And that was, and then I got taken and put in YOTC, and then got put in a placement out of state, and then got messed up at that placement, put in the YOTC in Kansas. I was there till 3 months before my 19th birthday. Question?
Yeah, do you guys have any goals or things you're working on that you feel comfortable sharing with us?
I'm working towards getting my GED, and also one of my goals is to save enough to start my own business, and I'm also having an internship in the middle. Like she said, her office, which is also in the same building as Nebraska Appleseed, there was a fire there, so we kind of had to put a stop on it. But I have an internship with Nebraska Appleseed.
My goals, I gotta go maybe, but I think my goal is, I have a shopping problem. I need to save money. That's probably my goal. I work at the mall, so it's kind of hard, but that's probably it. I'm good.
Well, I think everyone has goals. I'm a parent, so obviously my goal is to, be a parent every day. And so, yeah, that's a struggle. But I think we want to help you guys, you know, like what are the things that you guys are looking for to maybe be successful in the mentoring, or, you know, what are some fears that you guys are thinking? You know, like let us help you. Like, I mean, I know we want to share our stories, and we would love to share our stories with you and tell you everything, but we want to help you with our stories. So what are some questions? Like, you know, we're here, use us right now. You know, if you don't think anything's stupid, and if we feel comfortable, we know, like, hey, we're uncomfortable, we're not going to answer that. So don't be afraid to ask us stuff. Ask us so we can, you know, help you guys. We want to help you. So yeah.
Yes.
So you guys said that each of you were at a facility at one point, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so I guess my question is, like, what was the hardest thing to get used to when you got released?
Oh, the staff, they were rude.
You know, when we got released.
Oh,
So like, so obviously, you know, society is different than,
Yeah.
you know, I mean, I feel like in my placements, I was in detention center, so it was like, I know you guys see like those lockdown movies, like it's the same way in juvenile jail, like it's the same thing. And so going from a structured rules and regulations to freedom, like it's freedom, you know, so it's just being able to where to start to even navigate, you know, like where we all have goals, you know, so we all come out like we want a job. Some of us drop out of school, you know, we want to get back in school. Like we have all these goals, we just kind of don't know where to start. So, you know, just being able to start was my fear, you know, getting out. So I feel like, you know, having that person that's like lived a different life, you know, whether it be they are mentoring me because they've been there, or they just want to understand better, so they're mentoring me, you know, just being able to have that person like, hey, I'm trying to find a job, where can I start? You know, or I want to get my GED, where can I go?
I think the biggest struggle for me, and when I aged out of a group home, but I was only at that group home for 3 months, because in Kansas it's a different age of adulthood, and my main state was Nebraska. So I got transferred back here, and they just put me in a placement for 3 months. But before that, I was in a detention facility. Up there, they call them exactly what they are, juvenile jails. And I was in there for 3 years. So I had that structured environment. You got up at 6 a.m., you did physical time from 6 to 6:30, then you went to eat breakfast at 7. You got dressed and showered from 6:30 to 7, and then breakfast time, 7 o'clock, and then 7:30 was school. And then that was till 11:30 when you went to lunch. You had a little time before back to school. So it was like, your whole day, you were told what to do, when to do it, and if you didn't do it, there was consequences. And when I aged out, I was really behind on my credits in high school, so I was so used to that structured environment that when they kind of just put me out there, I had no one to tell me hey, it's time to get up and go to school. You gotta get up and go to school. So I was really having issues getting up and going to school each morning, and so I ended up dropping out and being kind of like clueless for a good like 6 months, and then I finally got a job, and now I'm just working my way back up, and I'm still in the process of starting my GED through the hub. I work on it now and then. It's still hard for me every day to be like, you need to go do this. It's something you need to get done, because I have no one there to push me to go do it. And I'm realizing now that I have to be the one to push myself to go do it each day. I have to be the one in charge of my life. I can't wait for someone to come along and be like, you need to go do this, you need to go do that. I have to do that myself. And that's my biggest issue when I got out, was I had no one to do that for me. So.
My biggest issue, no, I'm an adult, so I don't have issues, but
You have more issues than you do.
I think my issue was probably getting a job. I was 16 when I got out, so, and I had really bad anger issues at that time. I got fired from that job I got because I had argued with a customer. So I think that was like probably the hardest, my attitude. And like, I moved to a new town, so I went to 4 different high schools each year. I went to different high schools, so it was harder like transferring credits and like getting used to new people. I mean, I did graduate on time with my class, so, but I did have to work really hard for that, and it was not easy. But I think that was probably my biggest thing. It was just adjusting to the new town. And my attitude.
Was your mentor with you when you got fired, or working with you when you, was Allison working with you when you got fired?
Yeah.
Did you guys talk through it, or did you tell her where you
Well, I
lost?
told her what happened. He got mad because I gave him the wrong change. Like, I gave you an extra quarter. Why are you mad? And he went back and like, went back and complained to my boss and got fired. I moved anyway, so it's fine. But, I mean, Allison didn't blame me. She thought that he was in the wrong again. Allison agrees with me.
Okay. That's the secret.
She supports her, in other words.
She supports
She supported her, that's good.
Yes.
Specifically, you mentioned that you had like some kind of anger, and I know that like when you're in the facility, some people can kind of test you.
I've never like assaulted anybody.
No, not like not us, but just
I'm
like
too nice.
people getting like in your face, and like my girl that I have right now has really, she doesn't get along with a lot of the other people and staff, and she doesn't know when to hold back, so she gets bumped down levels. And I don't know, how did you kind of overcome that and just kind of learn to just let it roll, like let it go?
Well, when I was in Geneva, I think I didn't have any visitors. My dad had, he was really sick at the time, so I didn't think he was ever going to come visit me. It was a 3-hour drive. And one day he surprise visited me. And that was my wake-up call. Because I couldn't, there was like, I have family. Like, there's no point in me getting angry and getting mad at people who are going to help me. I'm not going to get kicked out. It's not a place like the foster home where you can get kicked out and go to the next. Like, you're going to stay there. I was there for 8 months, but it took me 3 months until I like got it together. And it was just a big wake-up call. And then Allison became a mentor, and that like helped because I didn't have many visitors. And so having her consistently come helped. I just knowing she was there, like, when we made a list, I still have a list, but we made a list when I was there, like, everything we were going to do. We probably done like 2 of the things, but it was good motivation.
I think she has to be ready within. You know, she has a choice. She needs to make that choice if she wants to snap or not, you know. And so I feel like as like a mentor, you know, mentoring her, maybe like remind her like your actions now have consequences in the future. You know, like you may not see it right now, but it's gonna affect you in the long run. And you just gotta learn, you know, to, okay, one argument, go to your room. You know, the next argument, okay, you talk back, you went to your room, it stopped, you know. So it's just it's a progressive thing, but I don't know, as a mentor, I would sit down with her and ask her what she wants. You know, do you want to be in here forever? Do you want this lifestyle? Because she can get out and then she can't function out, so she goes back in. You know, and so it's, do you want this lifestyle? If you don't, then what's make some goals? You know, like, and realistic goals. Like obviously her goal is to get out and have fun, you know, do whatever. But let's make a goal for this week. You know, you're in here for another 3 weeks. So what can we do today and tomorrow? You know, so I'll make little goals with her, and then that self-reward that, you know, even if she gets a hey, good job, you know, I'm really proud of you, she's gonna remember that, and then it's gonna stick with her. And so the next time when she doesn't run her mouth, she's gonna be like, oh yeah, she's gonna be real proud of me. She's gonna be real proud of me, you know. So and then it becomes a behavior where she's like, man, I don't know what the heck I was thinking. I was stupid. I don't know what I was doing back then. Like. And so it's just a learning behavior. So just be consistent with her, and like, you know, think of goals, you know, with her, and just remind her like, hey, you can act a fool now, but it's gonna bite you in the butt. It's gonna get you. It's gonna get you, and it's gonna be worse. And you're gonna be like, dude, I was stupid. And it could either go 2 ways. Like I was stupid, or my life sucks. I hate everyone. You know, so it's just as that person that you might be the only person there for her, and you may not think she is close to you, but she does have you close to her. And, you know, she may not talk to you about everything, and it may be kind of awkward at times sitting with her because you don't know what to talk about, but the more you show up, the more she's going to open up. And so just, you know, tell her she's doing okay, she made a mistake, life goes on, let's try different next time. You know, she'll make it.
Well, when tracking food, because Allison brought food and that helped me.
That's really helped me. When I was, like, I'm gonna go off the one in Kansas, because that was the one I spent the most time in. When I first was sent to the one in Kansas, I was only supposed to go for 6 months. Like I said, I ended up there 3 years. I had really bad anger issues at that time. And I was in a completely different state. All my family was here in Nebraska. They couldn't come see me. And the whole 3 years that I was there, I had no visitors at all, because my family couldn't come and help me. And that was a very big, like, it was a contribution to my anger, because I felt my family had betrayed me. Even though they called me, could call them every day, there was always money on the phone for me to call them, I still felt they had just left me. And about halfway, after like, I'm gonna say about a year and a half, my dad had a heart attack, and he survived, but that was a big wake-up call for me. And I still had a very big temper at that time. And the CO command, it was like midnight at the time, when they got the call to inform me my dad was in the hospital and he had a heart attack. And she pulled me in the office. She's like, I got some bad news for you. I'm like, why is there like 4 other guards in here? It can't be that bad. She's like, your dad had a heart attack. And I was just like, I sat there and I was like, you're lying to me. You're just trying to make me angry. And it's like, and it was working, but they weren't lying to me, and I figured they would. And they were like, no, we can let you call your dad if you don't believe us. He's in the hospital. I'm like, let me call my dad. And he like begged me not to freak out on the staff, not to go off on the staff. It wasn't their fault. And I think that was the biggest eye-opener for me, was when my dad had the heart attack and begged me not to do any more assault, or get any more assaults on staff or other kids, because at that time I was still facing 2 more pending charges on assault on staff. And thank God those ones were dropped, because that would have pushed it over to when I would have gone to adult jail in Kansas. But they dropped them, and my therapist, they had therapists there, she sat down with me the next day and was like, what can we do? We need to get you out of here. You're almost on 2.5 years here. You're the longest one that's been here. Well, there's something we need to do, obviously. And they had this special ward in the Kansas Juvenile ones that, it's the solitary confinement ward, but instead of different, like there's a normal solitary confinement where there's 23 and 1. And then the solitary confinement where like your schooling's in your room, but you still come out during the day. But it's like 3 kids in that whole entire pod. So you have less kids to interact with, but there's also more staff you got to deal with. And as more intense therapy, you go to therapy more often. And so I found reading really helped me at that time. Whenever I would get mad, I would go to the library, get a book, and just sit there and read. And I would put headphones in and just read. And even if like there was no music playing, because we couldn't have iPods or anything in there, we just had those noise canceling headphones. It still blocked everything else in my surroundings out. The book, like I use it, me and my dad use it as like, because my dad's into horses. When you're training a horse, you put blinders on the saddle. And that book was like, there's blinders on the saddle. And then like it just blocked everything else out. And it left me with my thoughts. And that probably was the worst thing that was like bothering me the most about it, was my thoughts. Because at that time I felt worthless, I felt horrible. And I think that me realizing I had hit rock bottom was what helped me. And then I finally started opening up to my therapist, and finally, from the time I opened up, it was, and it it was like, even the COs was like, it was a complete 360 for me. So I think my dad had a big influence on that. And also, like, my old caseworker, the one I was talking about earlier, he contacted me after that because he's friends with my family still. And he's like, when you get back to Nebraska, it's not if, it's when you get back to Nebraska, I'm going to take you out to dinner. The first day you're back in, I'm going to take you out to dinner. And sure enough, the first half an hour after I got back to Nebraska, he was at the door of the placement. Are you dressed yet? I'm like, for what? We're going to dinner, I told you that. Yeah, that was like 6 months ago you told me that, but okay, I will get dressed. So, yeah, it's mentors and people that are there and compliment you and like tell you when you're doing good instead of bad, because kids in the system have a lot of people that point out the bad, like you're doing this wrong, go to your room. You're doing this wrong, you get 4 hours room time, whatever. And you don't get much of, oh, good job, you did that correct, or good job, you got your homework done on time, or good job, you woke up and went to school all by yourself. We don't get that often. And for kids that haven't had that in their life at all, we really crave that.
Yeah, we've covered a lot, and I want to kind of flow back to some of these ideas, and you just touched on one of them. And so, Nadal, you also talked about birthdays and Thanksgivings and things like that. And I if you guys could just speak to the idea of like sort of recognizing milestones, that maybe that's part of the role of a mentor is saying, this is a big day for you, something like that.
I think one of the greatest things that Allison does is, because she goes to a lot of different countries and states and stuff, everywhere she goes, she gets me a souvenir so I can pretend I went there.
Where'd you get your sweater from? Egypt?
Like, she went to Spain and she got me a keychain, she got me a bracelet when she went to Norway. I'm from Dearborn, Michigan, so she got me a t-shirt from there, so I pretend I went there, but I never been there.
So you never felt bad about that? Because sometimes mentors ask this question. They'll be like, on spring break, I'm going on a cruise. Is it okay to send a postcard? But they'll kind of feel like guilty, especially if you're in a facility.
no.
They'll be like, no,
I'm happy for
Oh no, don't feel bad. You just
Yeah,
do it. Don't even ask them because they're
Yeah.
gonna tell you no because they're
They're
gonna
going to tell you no because they don't want you to spend your money on them.
Or that, or they just feel like they don't have to owe you. Like they're used to getting a pair of socks. Well, I got you socks. So don't even ask them. Just send it.
Just send it a surprise.
Just do it.
And that's best in facilities when you get a surprise from someone you care about.
I
Or
mean,
someone that
Allison's
means
like,
something to you.
Allison's my best friend. Like, I'm happy. She just got back from Peru. I was a little jealous. It's so beautiful there. But, I know she got me souvenirs, so I can pretend I was there. But, I'm happy that she goes this and, the other day, she got me a purse, I think, from the store because I have shop problem. And she's like, I'll pay for that for you. I'm like, no, you're not going to do that. And then a couple times I was like, okay, you can buy this for me. It's a free purse, so okay. It was $6, so it was a good deal. But now if it was like $50, I would be like, okay, probably not, but maybe. But it's like, I'm not going to be mad that Allison went to go do something that I couldn't be there. At least she got me a souvenir, something like to remember to buy. And someday I'll be able to experience it too.
Cool. Question?
Do you have an experience like that, Raven, where somebody kind of recognized your personal growth, or just said like, yeah, today is a day you should feel proud of, or something like that?
I'm sure, yeah. Do I remember? No, not gonna lie. I was a very close person, so I didn't really build relationships. But I know, growing up, whether it be something little, just that recognition, little things that matter, So, like she says, her mentor goes everywhere, but brings her back something that just, as if I was an adult, I would think, wow, like she's really thinking about me.
I don't know why.
I really make a. Okay, well, just the metaphor of this thing, So, it's just the thought that counts, the little things that matter, Even if it's someone going to get their license, and if they fail the first time, it's okay. Like we all make mistakes, we y'all fail, you know, just study the book, do it again, you know, just that reassurance, like, okay, you messed up, it's not the end of the world, like, you're human, I'm human, I messed up too. Just let them know, like, like right now, so I go to church, so I'm a big believer, you know, so when I go to church and have an outside event and someone at church cusses, I'm like, oh wow, you're human too.
Yeah.
You know, and they're like, Raven, you're crazy. Like, we're human too. We cuss. We do all these things bad. I'm like, oh, you know, so it's like that reassurance, like, okay, I'm normal. Like, it's okay to make mistakes. It's okay to do things not the right way.
Do you think mentees think their mentors are, like, do you think mentees put their mentor on a pedestal?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
You
It
don't
took me
think
the
they're normal?
longest time to cuss around Allison.
Really?
We became like, it was after I even left, I was like, okay, not my mentor anymore, you can't report me. Like, what if I tell her, like, okay, so it's probably not the best thing, but I'm Middle Eastern, I make jokes.
No, stop.
But it's like, I'm Middle Eastern, it's okay, I can do it. I would never I would never hurt anybody, but like, on my social media, I have to remember I can joke around with Allison about that, like, she's not gonna call Homeland Security on me. But like, it took a while for me to like get used to it, be like, okay, we're not mentee and mentor anymore, we can do this. Or like, Allison said that when I turned 20, which is a couple months, I can go party with her parents. They have a nice house, and they got a bar and all that inside there. She said I could drink there as long as they stay the night. See, I can remember I can do that with her now, but she's not going to report me for underage drinking, but like, I have to remind myself I can do that. No, I'm very safe with her, I'm very.
Yourself more.
I think it's like that feeling, you know, like, I don't know, when you see someone older than you, you know, you feel like they're better than you, they have their life together. Especially like, you know, going to college, like, they know that you're in college, so, you know, like, they automatically think you're smarter than them, and, you know, you come from a mom and dad home, and your mom's paying your school, and, you know, they stereotype just like everyone stereotypes. You know, everyone stereotypes, so, you know, they're human too, so it's just like that trust that comes in and breaking that wall down, because it is a wall, you know, and just sharing with them little things that you might think, like, you know, I had to go take my laundry to the laundromat this weekend, you know, just sharing those things with them is like, okay, you know, they're just like us, like, they're not better than us, they're not here to hurt us, they're not here to walk out of our lives, they're here to help us and, you know, be successful like them.
Yeah, I think that's, I don't know, just to put my own 2 cents in here really quick, like, you can demystify it for them really quick. A lot of us successful folks, it's because we have a huge network of support behind us, right? It's because we have folks like you in our corner, right? And so like, that can be part of this sort of trust building, is to say, no, lean on me, take the help that I have to offer. That's what gets you, you know, some of these accomplishments or some of this success. The successful people have a huge network of support behind them, and I think that most of you probably know that that's true.
So some of the mentors in the room are law students that will be working with young people to help seal their legal record or their past record. Have you all had that done?
Yes.
Is there any words of wisdom you can give us about that process? Or did you go through court? Or?
I actually did not go through court, but I had Nebraska didn't sell juvenile records before 2010, so I had something on my record from before then. And I had actually used the Hub's board legal representative.
We have a legal clinic with legal aid once a month. The last Tuesday of the month, 1:30 to 3:30.
Is it last now?
Yeah.
It used to be the first one, you know.
It's the last, in case anybody wants to refer anybody. And but it's through legal aid, and so it's recent. Now it's JC.
Mhm.
Yep.
Yeah. So yeah, we work with JC, and yeah, everybody needs to do this. If you think that your record is sealed, it's still
See,
worth
yeah,
sitting
just
down and making sure.
When I
because
first came back, I
It's
thought
not.
my record was sealed. But I forgot all about that charge before 2010. And I didn't know the law that it didn't come into place till 2000. So I still had that on my record. It was the only thing on there because everything else was already sealed. And she helped me fill out the paperwork and send it to the courthouse in that town. I couldn't have transportation out there, but they went ahead and sealed it because I had completed my treatment and everything during that, after that had happened. And yeah, just look into it, and like when someone approaches you and says, I don't know if there's anything on my record, especially look into it then, because yeah, like for me, I've been in the legal system since I was 6. I couldn't keep track of everything from 6 to 19, and thankfully Ariana did a thorough background check because that charge was hidden, it was one that wasn't even supposed to be there. And so, yeah, just look into it and don't be very sensitive when approaching them, like telling them, yeah, you still got this charge on your record, and ask them if they want to go into detail, because they might remember it and not want to go into detail with you, but then there's other ones that don't remember that specific charge and be like, can you jog my memory of what that specific charge was? So.
I don't have, to be honest, my record isn't sealed, and I just found that out like 2 years ago. We did that little clinic thing, but, so I guess we can't really answer your question with process. I do know the lady asked me, like, she wanted, I think we were gonna go to court and go in front of the juvenile judge and just like explain my life now, like what I'm doing successful now, what is, positive in my life, like what do I deserve, what am I doing to deserve my record sealed? And I'm not gonna lie, I ain't got time for all that. I don't need to explain to you, like I'm doing all these good stuff to seal my record. I'm not a juvenile. Go to my juvenile record. So I don't know. I'm done with the criminal life as an adult, so I don't really care about it. But I know they want some details. They want to know your goals. They want to know what you're doing. They want to know.
I had a light out that I say what I was doing better than everything.
They want to know some details about your life.
So have you ever run into problems and like when you apply for a job, has your past record ever come back to bother you or not? Have you not been hired or?
Well, that's kind of a good question because I guess maybe some things in my juvenile are the same, habitual criminal. So it's same thing on my juvenile, the same as my adult. So they might see, but I didn't know that it was even open. So they never came back and was like, well, we noticed when you were 12 years old this happened. They've never said that to me, but so I think when it's sealed, I think it's just like in the law. Like I don't think an employee can search your name, do a background check and see your juvenile. I think it's like if you get a charge as an adult, the judge can look back and see.
It's, as a juvenile, we've had some juveniles. I was just in court with a young woman who, she actually got the job, and then how it's pending for like 2 weeks till they run the background check. So she had got the job, then they ran the background check, and then they took that offer off the table. So that's why she was in court, was to get it sealed, but it was a juvenile offense. So.
See, that's good to know then, because then I guess that's why they still
Yeah.
have juvenile records.
So it's like, why do I still do it?
How can I still do it? That makes sense.
Even like a judge, like once your record sealed, even a judge can pull up your juvenile record. There's some federal background checks that like government jobs can pull your child, your juvenile.
Actually, I'm going to disagree with you. A judge can
I'll
see.
say, I think
Yeah,
judge and
a
prosecutor can see they can see when you were born and what you did.
Well, maybe not that, but.
I was told somewhere that I guess I was misinformed. Thank you.
Yeah.
Now I know.
I never had a problem with the day I did anything bad. No, I was just a runaway, that's all. I didn't get a ticket one time for vandalism, but it was like in the group home. It was a picture printing. Everything was police station about it, so.
How did you end up at YRTC for running away?
Actually, I was not supposed to be there. I got there and you go through orientation for 2 weeks before you're assigned a cottage to stay in for your stay there, and they had me sign an affidavit and they took it to court because I was supposed to be on probation first, and I wasn't. But instead of taking me out, they just made me stay.
Or like, you run away, you violate your probation,
Yeah.
so then you have to go to court, and then it's a process, and it's okay, you obviously can't live in society, we're just gonna lock you up, this is our last day.
Oh, that bad. Okay, what would I do was leave and come back in the morning. And then my boss would just come mad about it and just send me away. I was getting back. I was getting I had to come back.
I gotta go late.
So do any of you have questions about whether it's sealing process or ways that you can be helpful?
So assuming that this sort of trust has been built, and we've kind of talked a little bit about this, and I'm going to kind of keep coming back at it, I guess. But the word goals have been mentioned a couple of times and everything. What's an effective way, or how would you like to see your mentor then challenge you? So once the trust has been built, what's it look like to say, you have the potential to do this or that, and I would encourage you to pursue those goals or something like that.
See, my mentor would always told me, like, he would tell me when it was a realistic goal or one that was not realistic at all. But and then he would always tell me make short-term goals. Like, yeah, it's good to have long-term goals in the long run, but right now focus on short-term goals. You're a juvenile. You don't need to be planning all the way to when you're 30, because I have an issue with planning ahead a long time in the future. And but he would be like, so what's your goal? What's one thing you want to get done this week? Or what's one thing you want to get done today to meet your goal at the end of this week? So we would make like weekly goals, and then we would make daily goals. And that way I could see my progress. And he would always, like, once I completed my daily goal, he would be like, good job. Like, you one step closer to meeting your weekly goal. And then once I meet my weekly goal, he would be like, okay, what's your next week goal? And then eventually we would meet we would meet each month and be like, okay, we would have this week goal, but we would also have a goal because he understood my issue with planning ahead for the future. He's like, okay, I'm gonna let you set a month goal, but we're not going anywhere over a month goal. And then my weekly goals would lead up to that month goal. So it was seeing the advance to that monthly goal that helped me meet my goals. So planning out goals and how to meet them with a mentee would be helpful.
I'm sorry, can you?
Yeah, so your trust is there. Now it's time to sort of push you a little bit. What does that look like?
Like for just life or your goals?
Yeah, your life, your goals.
Well, obviously the relationship is going to continue to build, so just continue to, I don't know, I wouldn't focus every time meeting with your mentor about business, like just, how are you feeling today? It's easy to be like, good, if I'm good, no, but really, how are you really feeling? Like, let's not talk about what we're going to do a week, how are you feeling? So just, I don't know, it's just I guess it's hard to like say how it will go because everything and everyone's different. So just continue to build that relationship, continue to build that connection and communication. Like, okay, I see you want your driver's license. Well, have you got the book for your driver's license? No. Okay, let's go get the book then. So just communicating with them what their needs are and what they need you to help them to get their goals accomplished.
Do you have an example like that? Has Allison ever kind of pushed you to do something that she knew that was maybe something you're interested in?
Yeah, I'm sure she has, but I don't know, she never made me feel like, she always made me feel like I could do it, like it wasn't impossible. Like, that there's always a chance that I can do it. Like, I struggle with depression, so I never had motivation to do anything, and she always helped with that. Always made me, like, where she would come down to Lincoln, like, take me to go, like, do something that she knew I wanted to do, or, like, help me meet my goals. But she was always there. And she still is, but I act like she's gone. You know. She's just always been there. It's like, every time I have a job interview, she's always like excited, even though like I might not get the job. She always said, "You're gonna get the job. You're gonna do it. Like, just show them your great personality, you'll get the job." And I always do, but.
When you got out, how often did Allison contact you?
I mean, we talked every day, but to see me, because at that time I was living in Bellevue and she was in Lincoln, so she would come every weekend, and then it kind of just switched, and she went to Omaha and I was in Lincoln, so it was harder. But I moved out to Bellevue, I moved to Harvard, which is a very small town, so I tell people I'm a Harvard graduate.
Of course you do.
But Allison, like when I moved back to Lincoln after I graduated, she like turned 18. Right when I like a month after I moved back, I'm 19 now. But for my birthday, she came down. It was funny because she had like rushed through her work, and then her boss called her back like 3 times on her way back like to Lincoln to see me. So she was a little late, and I ignored her call. She was like, "Did you really ignore me?" I was like, "Yeah." Kind of made me mad, but she always made effort. Like whenever she was free, she always came down to me. And say she wanted to be here by her probably once. And like if we can't see each other that day, she'll video chat me and we'll talk. And like I've loved her. Like I'm the person I'll call you over and over. It could be me again.
I hate to bother you, but
Like I have no doubt she probably put like do not disturb so kind of stuff.
Reagan, I don't know if you worked with one of our mentors, but do you have an adult or somebody that was like played that role in your life?
I did. I had a teammate mentor from teammates, and she was a older lady, and she was just so sweet. Like we never even talked about like my problems. Like she didn't want to know about my home life. She didn't want to know about school. She just wanted to know about me, you know. And so we'd always just. I was younger, so I would always meet her at school. You know, we played games or do little crafts, like just little things. And then even like as an adult, like I have people from church who like reach out to me, and I have a mentor, another mentor after I graduated high school. I came from Geneva. My counselor hooked me up, and she still like, I just ran into her the other day, and she still reaches out to me and just checks up on me. And so I mean, I would like to see. I actually told her, I was like, "Man, I need you in my life. I want you back as my mentor." And she's like, "Raven, you're too old to be a mentor, but I will be your support system." And I was like, "Okay." Like, so we contact every once in a while. It's not a lot, but I wish it was more. I wish it was like, you know, like the dog, her little mentor over there. You know, just like that relationship that. I don't know, she didn't want to know about my problems. She just wanted to know about me and what I wanted in life. I'm a very friendly person,
So was it okay that did you feel like it was okay that she didn't know the problems, the troubles you had, or do you wish she would have asked you questions about that?
No, it was when I was comfortable, I would tell her, you know, like, as a child going through the system, like, you're set up with counselors already, so you already have someone in your life that's, you know, what's this like, what's that like, well, what did you do in this situation? Like, you already have that, and it's annoying going and someone asking me about my problems. Like, I'm not ready to talk about it. Just like, you know, as adults, like, sometimes we're just not ready to talk about it. We need to process it first. So I think it was fair. You know, it was when I was ready, I would come to her, and then I was, you know, and when I was ready, I would tell her, like, you know what, this is bothering me. This happened last night, and then she would be like, oh, okay, you know, and then put everything to the side and let's talk about it. So I think she was genuine, showed me that she didn't care about my problems, you know, and my problems didn't make me who I am as an individual, you know, and so I appreciated that she didn't cry to me, or, you know, she showed me that she was there for me, and if I wanted to come to her to a problem, I will. Otherwise, she's just here to be my friend. She's just here to have a good moment, because I don't have a lot of those right now. So.
And were you weren't crying? No, you weren't.
I-
Yeah.
You were
Well,
crying.
you
I
were
did.
in Geneva for 8 months. How long were you in Geneva for?
I was in Geneva for 8 months, but 2 of those months, I should have been gone at 6 months, but I was getting ready to leave, and my mom got into some situations with my brother, and so they held me a little bit longer while they investigated the situation. So I got disciplined for my mom's actions.
Wow, did you know that at the time? Did you feel like that way at the time? You knew?
Yeah, absolutely. I couldn't leave because she had a CPS case over me.
Wow.
Absolutely. I'm mad. I was like, take me. I don't even care where I go. Let me out of here. I earned it. Let me out of here. They're like, we can't let you out. You're not an adult. You're not going nowhere. We don't have a posse lined up for you.
Yeah.
And so I had to stay 2 extra months.
Yeah, I've always had that question about these systems that it's, to me, like I've heard both ways, right? But to me it seems like really just cruel and unusual that you would be in this situation and not have like, okay, but January 4th, I get to leave, right? Like you don't have an end date set on this. But I've heard young people say, no, it's a good thing because it gets you to work the program, because you want to get out of there. What are your thoughts on that? Is it a good thing because it gets you to work the program, or is it oppressive to not have a known day when you get out of there?
I find it depressing because it's kind of like no light at the end of the tunnel. Like, it kind of feels like you're there and they're not going to say, oh, you'll get out at this date because they just don't want to give you a date. But then again, there's also that good aspect because there's like, I can see it both sides because like, yes, it can be a good thing, but then there's those kids that dread getting back out. Like, the home life's so messed up that if they give them a date, they're just gonna, every time it gets close to that date, they're gonna sabotage and get pushed back farther and farther and farther, just so they don't have to go back to that life. So, and that one was me. I still have those self-sabotage tendencies sometimes, but when I was younger, they were like, every time I was getting ready to get out of group home, I would get so scared that I'm gonna get back out there and just mess up. Because my home life wasn't structured at all. And this structure helped me, and I would purposely just, at the time that I was getting out, I was self-sabotage so bad, they would send me into another group home, so I would have to get through that treatment. And it was just continuous again. I would work with treatment, I would get within like a week of getting out of the placement, and it's like I forgot everything. I would do everything back to my old ways. I would self-sabotage.
Was that intentional, or was it just you think?
See, at the time, I didn't know it was intentional. Yeah. It was like my subconscious doing it. But as I got older, I started realizing, and it was first pointed out by one of my therapists, I noticed my pattern of successfully completing treatment, but then 2 weeks before I get released, right when they set that release date, I would mess up. I would freak out. I would be like, I'm not ready to go back. Everything in my possibility to stay. Yes.
Personal opinion, do you think that the facilities that you guys were at did a good job at like addressing your problems and like getting you help, or do you think that there's something better they could have done?
I think the best thing they did for me was Bachelor with Allison. honestly.
See, the one in YOTC didn't do much to help me. It was the one in Kansas that helped me more. And that was only, and I feel they do a lot to help you, but you have to be willing to accept it. And that's everything in the system. You have to be willing to accept that help and take it. And until that point, there's no matter how much they try to help you, you're just gonna play along, play the system, and be like, yeah, I'm gonna follow what you say, yeah, I'm gonna do it, whatever. And not really take that help, because you don't want it. So, I don't really remember much about my time at Connie because it was more I played the system and just got out. But, so I can't really say that one helped me because I wasn't willing to get help. But the one in Kansas, it didn't have much to help you, but what was there was the support. And you could lean on that support if you needed to. But it was more like you had to request that support. It wasn't given to you right away. You had to request a therapist. You had to request a mentor. You had to fill out paperwork. You had to sign releases. You had to have your caseworker sign it. So it was more, it's not readily unfavorable.
It's kind of off topic, but one thing I will recommend is writing letters. Because Allison used to hers would be in rainbows, and use crayons and different colors. They're so cute. But I would never write her back because I'm really crappy at writing. So I'd be like, hey, what's up? And send that. That's it. But it was always nice. She always wrote letters every week, even when I wouldn't respond. I wanted to, I can't write letters.
That's actually really awesome advice, because I get that question a lot from mentors. They'll be like, well, they didn't write back to
Oh, I
me.
loved it. I have all the letters still. My graduation day, she actually handmade it. She had a cap and gown on there. It was so cute.
Y'all are gonna meet Allison and be like, yeah, okay, thanks for, just every Christmas, every Thanksgiving, letters every week.
Then she's gonna say, thanks a lot.
What was your question?
Oh, just did you feel that the facility, Geneva, I think you said you went to, yeah, did they help you, or do you think there's something, help you with your problems, do you think there's something better they could have done?
I think they could have maybe changed their system a little bit. They see so many children, that go through that place. And 6 to 8 months is the average stay, so it's not that's a lot. We look at that and we're like, wow, that's a lot. But if you think about it 8 months ago, you're like, whoa, time went by. So I think they're so used to doing things in such a way that it's not sincere. I think you can obviously get something out of it, and I have a hard time believing and faking to make it, because you can go 3 months without wanting to improve something, but deep down inside something's improving, because obviously, you've gotten by 3 months, and you're closer to being out. So I think they could do better things. No, to your question. No, that's your answer, no. I don't think they were helpful.
Okay.
I think it's something I did within myself, what books I read, or what conversations I had with my peers, I think I helped myself.
Sorry, I'm not a student. I just have a really quick question. Are you guys, you're allowed books while in the facility, right?
Yeah.
Or are those only a pre-approved books that are already
Yes.
there?
I mean, there's a library at the school that is there.
The pre-approved books that have been censored to not have violence or anything in it.
Like 50 Shades of Grey is not.
Yeah.
It's not getting in the walls.
No.
They're not going to allow that. And there is some books that are realistic. I remember when I was in the detention center, I read some some violent books, and so it was realistic. It helped me get through the institution, because I don't know. They have books there, but they have just so a lot of times everything's rotated out. So the books that are in your pod or in your area, they've been there for a month.
See,
and most of it is, I mean, I'm not gonna go wrong with it, but most of it is the Holy Bible, you know, and so a lot of people aren't gonna pick that up, especially, you know, in that situation, you know, so.
Also, like, when I was in Kansas, the only way we were allowed, like, other books was, once I got a therapist, like, I would request through her a book, and then, like, my dad could put money on my books, and then we could send, like, the facility could send, like, a check to the publisher and be like, we want this book. And it had to be packaged and straight from the publisher, it couldn't be sent in from, like, a family member or anything, so.
Yeah, I had to be for the publisher. That's
It had to
something
be
that's-
packaged and sealed.
Yeah, a lot of times people don't have that luxury of
Yeah.
getting money on their books or stuff like that, so they're not reading, they're writing coloring pictures.
And crocheting.
Yeah.
Actually, they banned the crochet because some girls tried to use it to get the windows open and ran.
Where in Geneva?
Mhm.
They didn't have crochet when I was there.
I'll make sure my one girl actually got stuck in the window. So they caught her.
You got a question?
I was just curious, if you guys had a favorite staff member, and, if you did, what did they like do different?
I have both of them on my Facebook, I still talk to them.
I actually, this is it's a detention facility I was at, but when I was in Madison County Detention, I was really like close with the coordinator, which is surprising because he's never on before. But his name's Jesse, and I still contact him once or twice a month to just be like, hey, what's up, you know? And we talk, and yeah. And he used to come on the unit just once a day, just to come up to me and be like, yo, how's everything going? Is there anything I can help with? And it's just that when he would come on the unit, everything, like, even the guards would be surprised, like, why is Jesse coming on the unit? Like, he's not up for CO. He's not a trained CO. Like, he's just a coordinator. He's in charge of the day-to-day diagnosis of where the staff's going to be at, what's the day's going to look like, everything like that. And him coming on the unit and just, like, once he got hired, he would come on the unit every day and go around to everyone and be like, is there anything that I can tell my staff that would help you today? Like, and it was very nice of him to do. And so, yeah, to answer your question, yeah, I think every juvenile would say they would have a favorite staff. It's most likely the one that's nicest to you and doesn't punish you when you sometimes deserve it, or it doesn't give you as harsh a punishment. And then there's those staff that punish everyone and give them the most severe punishment, so of course you're gonna hate. But, so yeah, if you
I have my favorite staff was actually my guidance counselor there, and because I come from a family that we don't have much money, so my dad never put money on the phone so I could call him. So when she was there, she would let me use her office phone since I didn't have money to call. So I think she's kind of my favorite.
It's the one that goes out of your way to help you, that's the most likely.
Yeah, the one that helps you be comfortable in your situation, like, I don't know, at the detention center, there was like no activities, like, you just sat around, you know, so like, I was in there, and I always wanted to go to the gym, and so I finally like just talked to a couple staff, a couple CEOs, and was like, look, like, people want to play sports, like, people, that's just realistic things what people do in middle school, like, we want to play basketball, we want a basketball game, we want a soccer game, you know, like, can you get something, it's hard, because a lot of it's, you know, hands-on contact, you know, you can't touch in there at all, so I had two guards up there, like, he got like little tournament games going on, you know, so like each pod would play each other, and obviously there was rules, you know, if you get to push and shove, you don't forget where you came from. That room, okay?
Yeah.
So, you know, they just made it comfy, you know, for the situation, what we're in, you know, they're there, we're there, let's kind of make it fun, so.
I had the privilege of taking you and Raven and the doll to the JDC for our like little holiday give back thing.
Oh my God.
So we brought 50-ish cookies with cards that just kind of had inspirational quotes. We didn't know who individually each one of these was going to, so just sort of generic, you know, kind of keep your head up and here's a cookie kind of a thing. And we delivered them, and I don't know how many staff members were like, wait, Raven and Nadal are here, we gotta come out and see them. There's like, there's a little party in the lobby by the time we were done.
That's
I think
awesome.
my favorite staff member there was Miss B, because.
Which one was that? What? JC.
Yeah, Lincoln.
Juvenile, yeah.
And because she was friends with my mom, and my brother had passed away, and we didn't have the money to pay for the headstone, and she donated money to us to pay for it. So she's probably my favorite staff member from JVC.
I kind of laugh about that because, I mean, they remember me because I was bad.
Oh, you were not the favorite while you were there.
I was pretty realistic while I acted out, but they knew, like, they were like, I made impacts. You're going to remember me today.
You know, that's interesting though, because what's that like? Because, you know, you've had that experience, I know Tim had that experience where we were at NJJA, and somebody's like, wait, you're that guy?
Yeah.
And now you're here like doing cool
Wait.
stuff? Like,
I remember that. I still owe the money to that place back then.
tell that story if you don't mind, because it's kind of funny.
I still, like, I was in a placement when I was like 14, and it was like the worst, like, I was at like the I don't give a shit kind of phase. Like, I'm gonna do whatever I want, like, I'm gonna destroy this placement. And, I chose the wrong vehicle to kind of take a baseball bat to.
Whoa.
And it was actually the kind of like owner, president type person's vehicle, and it was really nice. I targeted like the nicest vehicle on the property. And he was at Nebraska Juvenile Justice Association, like this was like 7, 8 years later, and he's like, "You're here doing this? What are you doing these days? Like, this is a complete 360 of what I remember you taking a baseball bat to my car and just destroying it. Like, it wasn't even drivable after that."
Whoa.
And she was like, "By the way, you still owe me money on the car." No. But you know what, since you're doing this, I'm gonna forgive you and just say you don't owe me. And I was just like, because the whole time I knew he was there because I saw him at the beginning. I was like trying to avoid him and everything. And then he ran into, like, I turned the corner and he, like, we literally ran into each other. And I was just like, okay. Yeah, it was just funny.
So I think this semester, usually how this class works is the whole fall semester, mentors work and they're working with kids in the facility and then kids transition out. For whatever reason, this year we must have a whole bunch of kids that are in the I don't give a crap phase.
Yeah, that
Because
happens a couple times.
nobody has, a lot of the kids haven't transitioned out.
Yeah.
So do you have any advice for, I think, you know, they're feeling like down and out because it's going on and on.
I would really encourage you to talk to them why they're in that I don't give a shit phase. And mine, I'm not going to go into detail. I was taken out of home right before then for like the 7th time already. And they told me this time you won't be going back. And that really made me super angry. Like, they were pretty much saying, "You're in the system the rest of your juvenile life. We're not sending you home ever again. You're done going home." They took full custody away from my parents, and I was in the system. And that really, like, frustrated me. And I just decided, you know what, if the state's gonna do this to me, I'm gonna do whatever I can to get back at them. I'm gonna make my caseworker's life hell. And it turned around and made my life hell even more, but so then I turned around and made their life even more hell. So it's kind of like a repeating pattern. So I would find out the main cause of why they don't give a shit, to say, pardon my French, but and talk to them on that and be like, you know, this is really not hurting your caseworker. You're just stuck here when they're in the hospital, they're in the office. They gotta go. Well, long story time, but anyway, they gotta go home each night to their family, their kids, and they gotta go and take the kids out to eat or whatever, and you're stuck here eating this junk food. Yeah. So it's mainly hurting them. So find out that the main cause and try to get to that core issue.
kind of wrap it up. Any sort of final thoughts? Any final questions?
I will bring up the issue last year, well, the main topic we had last year was the sugarcoating or not sugarcoating. Being straightforward with the mentee or kind of beating around the bush. And for me, I find it good when you're straightforward with me because I'd be like, oh crap, I'm messing up. And, but there was a lot of kids out there that would be like, why the hell are you pointing this out to me? Screw you. But there's some, yes, it's sometimes good to sugarcoat, and then you have to realize where they're at within themselves to find this out, is when you can be straightforward with them. They have to be at the point to be like, I want someone to point this out to me. I'm waiting for someone to point this out to me. Where I can better myself, what I can do to better it. And then there's those ones that you can't get that because they get aggressive with you or they get frustrated with you and storm out of the room or whatever. So it all depends on where that person's at within themselves.
I think to kind of reflect on that, I think like when I went through a phase where I didn't care about nothing. I don't care. I'll sit in jail. I've been here forever anyways. It's that hope. They have no hope. They've lost everything. 9 times out of 10, they've already had. They only have one parent, and that parent, they don't see them as much because them and the parent are fighting. So it's really they have nothing to lose. And so just giving them that one thing in life, that one we all never want to feel alone. We all have friends, so just being that one person to them could really make a difference. And even if it's just little words of encouragement, every day, or just something little, like that gives them something to hope for, and some people might not have that person to talk about life things, so they're constantly thinking about their past and their pain and their hurt. So it's constantly, making them bitter and making them, worse. So just, being able to give them that little hope is what's going to make it.
Give them that hope that someone cares.
Yeah.
Want to add something at all? Leave us with a laugh.
Well, I'm trying to force it.
Yeah.
I also always gave me hope and was really there. She's like that constantly positive person. Everything has to be positive. So, I don't know, I just can never be in a bad mood around her, so she didn't have hope. Well, you guys can see us in the documentary. I'm sure she has it, she can show you guys.
They've seen clips of it, so.
I practice crying in the mirror so I don't look ugly. So I mean, the cries were real. I was practicing my face in it.
So my first memory of Nadal is we used to take mentors to the lead center. We used to get everybody dressed up and we'd go, some of the kids would go. And so my very first memory of Nadal is we went out, it was a Saturday night, we had a whole bunch of mentors, we're like 3 rows in the lead center. Nadal sits right down next to me and she goes, so what were you in for? And I was like, now that I've gotten to know you, it all makes sense.
Cool. Well, thank you all very much. Let your mentees know that this is an opportunity that they might be interested in, sort of advocacy, working for system change and stuff like that. And if I can put one little tiny synthesis on this, I think when we look at the language of the system, and we look at the language of a good mentee, I'm seeing that there's this, on one side there's this reactionary side, right? This cause and effect and this conditionality, right? Where it's like, because of this, now the consequences are this. And I think that just, it seems like the language of the good mentor is one of sort of implacable, steady, kind of unconditionality that just, I think that a lot of times even, not to be like condescending or anything like that, but I think a lot of times young people look for that reaction. They'll challenge you with, what is your reaction going to be when I tell you that I have been drinking with my friends or whatever? And then they gauge you, right, about how trustworthy you are based on your response to some of these, sort of carefully placed statements that they're waiting for you to sort of fall into this trap oh no, you know, hand wringing and all this kind of thing. So I
Yeah,
think
they'll
that,
play your buttons.
yeah.
It's just sad to say, but the kids in the system have, and especially the ones that have been in the system, learn to manipulate and push you to see where you stand on things and how far they will push you until you snap. And especially ones, well, tell you listen up or report them or whatever. And then, but there's those ones that will push you and then push you and push you and push you and push you. And I used to do
No, I was too nice, I can do it.
Well, thanks again.
Thank you,
Yeah.
guys.
A lot of times they don't know about Project Everlast because they think I'm not going to join that program. So if you guys do have your teens coming out, send them our way and hear them.
Yeah, definitely bring it up. I mean, let them know that you know, watched this
Especially-
presentation, it was useful and fun, and so.
We do have one in YOTC in Colony. I know that for a fact. I don't know much about Geneva.
Yeah, there's one in Geneva, there's one in Cologne.
Okay. The one in Coney, if you are, like when NJJ comes up, if you are on lower status, they do take some chosen ones, I'm not gonna put it, but two NJJ conferences,
Yeah.
so. That would be one to look forward to if you are youth in YOTC in Coney and want to advocate for change in YOTC, well, not specifically, but in the juvenile justice.
All right, you got a phone number too.
She got it all.
She got it all. Oh, is that all?
That's us.
Oh, okay.
All right.
Okay, so there's like two of the hubs, so that's why we add all this on actually.
Yes.
So you really, this makes a difference. If you're like trying to Google us, if you type this in, you're gonna get,
The one downtown.
so.
Oh, good to know. I didn't know that.
Yeah, this is the nonprofit, so you gotta add the central access point for young adults.
Wow, very good.
And it's at the hub, so there's more than just Project Everlast.
So is the records clinic, is that at the hub downtown? Okay.
Like 12 and B,